Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm so glad that you could carve out some time this evening at this virtual town hall with Anthony Furey. So he, as a mayoral candidate, can address some of the issues of concern in the Jewish community. And the first thing I'm going to do is welcome you and welcome Anthony, and ask Anthony if you wouldn't mind, first of all, just telling us a little bit about who he is for those of us who aren't already familiar.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dave, and good evening to everyone. And thank you, Dave, for putting this together. And I know a lot of people have a lot of respect and admiration for your writing and your advocacy. So it's great to be here with you as host. And hello to people who may not have met me before or who aren't familiar with me and my work. I've had the great privilege of being a newspaper columnist and broadcaster for well over a decade here in the city of Toronto, a city that I love so much. I'm the father of 3 young children, all boys, lots of time spent in the hockey rink. And one of the things that's been so great about being a broadcaster and a newspaper columnist is you get to travel all around the city and you meet people from all walks of life, and you hear about all the amazing things that are happening to them in the city. And then you also hear about their concerns, of course, with what's going on. And increasingly in recent years, the concerns have unfortunately mounted, hearing from seniors who no longer feel safe or who feel like affordability issues when they're on fixed incomes are becoming a challenge. I hear from families younger than mine who say, will we ever be able to afford a home? Maybe we should just move out of Toronto. It's all very unfortunate stuff because my wife and I are sticking it out for the long haul. We believe in this city, the future of this city. And we believe it's a city worth fighting for, which is one of the many reasons why I decided to run for mayor. I also decided to run for mayor because I believe the center has shifted more to a direction where I have been consistent politically for a number of years about the way we need to confront issues in terms of concerns with affordability, with increasing taxes, people's tax dollars not being respected. And when it comes to lawlessness on our streets and a tragic sense of urban decay that we must turn around. And I think people want a fresh voice and a fresh perspective who will say no to the direction that the city is headed in and say we must put our foot down and try and avert heading any further in the direction of those heartbreaking scenes we see from Vancouver, Seattle, and San Francisco. Very unfortunate things. So I'm deeply committed to public safety issues, to affordability issues, bringing common sense back to City Hall, and making sure that the voices who are championed at City Hall and the voices that have sway at City Hall are the voices of regular folks in the communities who ought to be heard from, that it's not just certain voices who are selectively commandeering the agenda at City Hall. We need something of a realignment there. And it's been a great privilege as it is just the past few weeks to get out and about and meet so many different people and so many different communities. And I'm someone who certainly doesn't feel that I'm owed this. I'm looking to fight for this or to earn people's trust, should I say, one vote at a time. And I hope to have the opportunity to earn your trust this evening.
Thank you. I may have been a little remiss, and I didn't want to make this about me, but for those of you who are familiar with who I am, I'm Dave Gordon. If you'll permit to, that I introduce myself a moment. Anthony alluded to the fact that I'm a local journalist and writer, editor, also advocate, and I'm one of the co-founders of Jewish and Israel advocacy group called United Grassroots Movement. Anthony, I wanted to piggyback on what you've just been saying and ask you maybe if you could give us some specifics in regards to what your platform is, what makes you a different candidate from anybody else, maybe 3, 4 of your ideas that you'd like to implement if elected mayor.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity, Dave. When it comes to public safety and look, door knocking, meeting with community groups, the number of people who say not only do they not let their kids ride the subway anymore, they're not letting their teenagers ride the subway anymore. It's quite tragic for all of these concerns. One thing that I've said that I think differentiates me from a number of the other candidates, that so many of the random attacks we're seeing on our streets, so much of the violence goes back to the drug crisis, that a lot of these attacks are caused by persons who are unfortunately troubled by drugs. And yet City Hall wants to create at least 2 new drug injection sites downtown. And I have said, I made a big announcement that thankfully got a lot of people talking, that we're not going to go in that direction. Instead, we're going to say time out, and we're going to take the resources already allocated to those projects, so the construction hasn't started, we're going to retool them to creating treatment centers, because a compassionate society does not keep people on drugs, it gets them off of drugs. And by helping those people reclaim their lives, we can help our own families be safer. I actually just went up in Willowdale to Willowdale Manor, a seniors facility, where they had a public hearing. Well, it was supposed to be a public hearing about plans to put a new modular housing unit for the chronically homeless and addicted right on the front lawn, literally the front lawn of this seniors facility in Willowdale. The city has acknowledged that there will also be harm reduction services provided there, which means this will be a quasi-injection site. Unfortunately, myself and former Chief Saunders were turned away. We were told we were not welcome there to hear the residents' concerns, which was unfortunate. I think council and city hall are not being as forthcoming about these plans as they could be. And I really want to step forward and offer some common sense on this issue, because a lot of people are concerned about this. Also, when it comes to public safety more generally, I think we need a more visible police presence. I think we've allowed people to think that minor infractions can occur. If you can vandalize the subway systems or litter all over, or, unfortunately, there's an awful stench that is in a lot of subway cars these days. If you allow minor infractions to go unchecked, that sends a signal that larger ones can happen. It's called the broken windows theory, of course. They had a lot of problems with that in New York and other cities throughout the decades. And I am the only candidate who has not at some point thrown the Toronto police force under the bus, either by siding with the activists or undermining the police force over the years. I've always supported, obviously, disciplining the bad apples, and we see some bad things that some officers do, but never throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's public safety. I'd just like to quickly talk about affordability. I've said that I'm going to do a 90-day review as soon as I get into office to review all city services, make sure they're laser focused on what you think the city should actually be getting up to. Because there's a number of projects that if I would tell you about them right now, you'd say, come on, you're pulling my leg, man. The city doesn't do that, and they do. And we should realign and do not have those funds go to those things to get value for money. Because right now there's city councilors that have come out of the gate saying if they're mayor, they are going to raise taxes, they're going to tear down the Gardner, and if they can't tear down the Gardner, they're going to add road tolls to the Gardner and the DVP. All of the councilors running for mayor right now voted to move forward with a study to introduce a municipal sales tax. So that would increase the price of goods. It would hurt small businesses that have already been hurt the past few years. Of course, increase the price of basic goods for regular folks everywhere. So I think there's a lot of status quo voices out there who would make the city less safe and less affordable. I am committed to making the city more safe and more affordable. And as someone who's been a broadcaster, Dave, I can just keep talking and monologuing on and on. But this is the few months in my life where I also commit to listening a lot to people as well. So I could go on with other specific policies, but I'll see if people have some particular questions too.
Well, I've got 2 or 3 questions, but before I get to the main questions, I'm wondering if you might be able to get on one specific item that gets under your skin about profligate spending, excessive or gratuitous spending that you just alluded to.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one example that just really stunned me was that the city of Toronto gives $1,000 grants to Toronto District School Board students if there are 2 or more of them who apply to do activism on climate change. And they can partner with Greenpeace and bring them into the class. And they get $1,000 of Toronto taxpayer dollars to bring Greenpeace in to do this sort of class rally. And look, people are very passionate about these environmental issues, and if that's your thing, that's fine. But you do that on evenings and weekends, and you do it with your own funds. It's just very bizarre that the city would give a provincial body, a school board, money to bring in Greenpeace. It's just an odd thing. So there's a lot of crossing the streams there that need to be reevaluated, and we have a lot more examples.
Well, since this is a virtual town hall primarily about issues of concern to the Jewish community, let me begin by introducing the idea that it's all too familiar that anti-Semitism is on the rise. It's a serious problem, has been for some time. And I'd like to know what, as mayor, or what you would do with City Hall to shrink this, slow this down, curtail it, and address it?
Well, thank you for the question because it's an important one, Dave. And my first answer is that I would acknowledge the problem because I think there are a lot of people who would not acknowledge it, would deny it, or would even fight back against the notion that anti-Semitism is on the rise. But it's truly gobsmacking to read those surveys of how Holocaust education has just really dropped off in recent years, that there are kids who aren't at all aware of it or even are willing to go in for awful revisionist history or denialism, and that's somehow in this online world or whatever it is, or a state of the education system that has become a trend. That is a problem. Now, when we refer to the education system, I think that there are a lot of challenges there, both in terms of how we educate about these issues, but also in anti-Semitism occurring at these facilities. Now, one thing that I found very interesting running for mayor and meeting with parent groups from all walks of life is they're all very concerned about education. And they say, what can you do as mayor? Now, obviously, the mayor does not run the school boards, but the mayor has a strong relationship with the school board and with trustees as partners. So I would relay the concerns of parents to the director of education and to trustees. And that goes along the lines of parents' rights, parents' concerns about safety in schools, about academic excellence, and about anti-Semitism and other forms of discrimination in the schools. So I will not hesitate to pick up the phone and get the head of education on the line and say, we got a problem. Maybe once you were getting one email a month on this issue, now we're getting 10 or 20 or what have you, because as we acknowledge, anti-Semitism is rising. So acknowledging the problem exists, speaking to the partners who can play a role in combating it. I think those are major items to be done on this. I mean, to really have a zero tolerance approach for it.
I'm wondering if you had any ideas on the table to maybe clamp down on these incidents. I mean, everything from graffiti on synagogues to stones being thrown through the windows, to people attacked, to discrimination, as you mentioned, and the politicization of the classrooms, and even the politicization on campus as well, where students don't feel safe all the time, and they are treated disrespectfully on campus and unfairly, among very many things. So I'm wondering if you had any further thoughts on how you might face these challenges as mayor.
Yeah, certainly. And I think it goes beyond just the tweet statements denouncing, which I will do. I will most definitely do. But I think there's a lot of politicians who do the statements to say, okay, I'm covered, but then the issue persists. Why does the issue persist? And I think we're not isolating the specific concerns. We're not going to the specific individual, the classroom, the teacher. Unfortunately, that's happening, and drilling down on the issue and getting partners together. I know there are a number of Jewish advocacy groups which are more than happy to partner in situations, to offer education resources, to sit down and maybe there's a young person who got some wrong information, or they're just acting up in some way. And I know there are a lot of very a lot of great Jewish organizations which would sit down make a meaningful human connection with people to help them see what's actually going on, to tell them stories. I mean, education is really key, and that would be ideal to stave things off. In cases where education isn't cutting it, and we do have people who are basically threatening people with violence or doing these acts. Look, unfortunately, when it comes to policing, we know that there are so many things that are not being taken seriously, not being investigated. If there is a brick thrown through a window of a synagogue, well, we do know that there are cameras all around different streets where we can go, and we can, as you know, people have their little cameras for porch pirates and so forth, and those are used. That's used to investigate all sorts of crimes. Why can police not go and do those sorts of endeavors? Basically, treat it seriously. Go, not just, okay, thanks, yeah, all right, brick thrown, okay, we'll write a report. No, I mean, do the legwork. Go and show up. Who did this? Why did they do this? And obviously, unfortunately, they've probably gone beyond the education aspect, although I guess that should still be involved, but that's a crime. So you track the person down and you send you make a charge, and that sends the sign to other people that you can't get away with doing this. Because if we just shrug off, and I was talking about on the subway, if minor infractions are allowed, larger ones will happen. If it's okay to just throw bricks through synagogues, I mean, that sends a signal that it's okay to do other more severe things that I don't even want to verbalize right now. So I think it's about sending zero tolerance for the little things before they escalate into the bigger things. Because to your point, Dave, we are seeing things on the rise, and that means the bigger things are slowly on the rise as well.
Mhm. Yeah, there's rising intolerance. That's for certain. And we pride ourselves on being a multicultural city and a multicultural country, and we foster multiculturalism and encourage multiculturalism and acceptance. And yet, could it have been 2, 3 years ago, right in front of City Hall, there was a big mess of I guess you can call it a demonstration, but demonstration wouldn't be the right word to describe it, because it got a whole lot more rowdy, and I guess the word is unruly for a demonstration right in front of City Hall. And I don't have to tell you or any of the attendees here that we see this thing called the Al-Quds rally. We see the Nakba rally and other such types of rallies, sometimes without even a permit. And the hatred that is spewed at some of these rallies, suffice to say, is beyond the pale. I'd love to know what your response is to that. And as a corollary, I'd like to inform our attendees that there is actually an anti-hate legislation, a 3-page document passed by near consensus in 2019 by City Hall councilors that addresses this very issue. But in the past 4 years, it doesn't seem like anything had been acted upon. And these rallies have been going on for, at the best of my knowledge, at least 12 years in an organized capacity. So I present these various questions and challenges to you, Anthony, and I'd love to know how you would face them.
Yeah, it's something, because we hear the public discussion around this issue, and I don't think the framing is always entirely accurate in terms of how it's reported on. One can just simply Google Al-Quds Day, and you look and you go, oh, okay, this is created by the Ayatollah, by the Iranian regime. What do they get up to? What is the Al-Quds force? This is something that I'm not sure if people want to be associated with, regardless of their views on geopolitical issues. This is not really something that the flag should be raised for in terms of a rally. The streets of Toronto, and then to your point, at Nathan Phillips Square in front of City Hall, one would hope that people would go out and seek permits for events, but one wonders, maybe they're not seeking a permit for this particular event, because when you view the permit, you go, well, does this actually fit our bylaws and our anti-hate legislation? And maybe we'll be denied that permit if we apply for it. But if you don't have a permit, we have a problem, because you can't be taking up public space and you can't be obstructing motor vehicles and sidewalks. So there's that aspect there of enforcing whether or not one is able to have this gathering. And I say this as someone who's a very ardent free speech advocate. So if people want to be passionate about various issues that are going on around the world, we have to provide space for that. But if we have a situation where, as we have seen, people are basically, not basically, they are calling for the destruction of an entire homeland, which is basically shorthand for genocide. If that doesn't contravene those laws, what doesn't? But, I appreciate, Dave, you said that it was passed near unanimously. We also know that there are a few city councilors and a few MPPs and a few MPs who don't see things this way and are perhaps a little supportive of what's going on at these rallies. And that is a major problem. So there's also a sort of air war battle in terms of how they like to frame these issues. And we talked about public education, just pointing out like what's really going on here at this event, what this event stands for, that, guys, have you seen some of the things the Ayatollah has said, that Khomeini has said, that former presidents of Iran has said? It ain't pretty, and you're aligning yourself with this. So this is a problem. And again, going back to the minor infractions, if you're doing a bunch of things around this event that aren't legit in terms of not getting the correct permit. And then you're saying things that are skirting the edges. I think we've seen that some of these groups are trying to balance things along a certain line here to try and avoid this, but other times they're pretty brazen. So if a bylaw has been broken, or a law or piece of legislation has been broken, I'd be curious to know why the Toronto Police Service don't feel, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier about, throwing the police force under the bus, why they don't feel empowered to actually enforce the law. And one thing that the mayor of Toronto is able to do is, of course, speak with the Toronto Police Services Board and the chief about, hey guys, there's something coming up, or there's something that just happened where I'm hearing from community groups that there were some laws broken. Can we do something about this, please? Without directing the police, the mayor can't do that, but hey, why aren't you following these laws? Why aren't you acting upon this? And I think being a firm voice for that is very important.
There's some discussion in addition that rallies or organizers of rallies need to take out insurance for their event, and sometimes it's very large, $1 million to $5 million. Sometimes it's smaller depending on the event. But I don't know if you have at all a sense of this, but would there be any sort of discussion that you could have with insurance companies and ask them if they would refrain from insuring these events based on the possible contravention of city bylaws?
Well, it's funny because even the way we're discussing this event, that's clearly an insurance liability, because there are clearly things going on that are a liability, but the insurance companies never had it framed that way. So to go back to the public framing of it, the way we speak about these events, how there are a few politicians who get away with approving it, the brazenness of things, it's like the insurance company would not even see a liability. So I think that conversation from the mayor, which I would be willing to have with them, makes them acknowledge that that it is a liability, and that they're perhaps not that they're perhaps not doing their actuarial duties correctly to assess
Sure.
what sort of things they're aligning themselves with, what they could be on the hook for here.
Have you seen the anti-hate legislation from City Hall, this 3-page document? And I'm wondering what your thoughts are. Would you amend it? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you have any opinion either way on this piece of legislation?
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes worry because we have seen, particularly when it comes to defining things like Islamophobia and how that is and isn't used in legislatures for how we speak about issues. I'm reticent to see these things become too restrictive. But at the same time, the basic fact that you can have this in the first place and then have situations where people are clearly contravening it and there is no repercussions, I mean, that's a challenge. But I'd be open to talking to people about what sort of revisions are required to kind of deal with the reality on the ground. Because as we said at the beginning of all this, okay, anti-Semitism on the rise, incidents worsening, and zero repercussions. So that's clearly a problem. I think that suggests that is it the letter of the law, or is it the lax enforcement? And I'm inclined to say that we do have the tools to send a message as is, and we're not using those tools. That seems to be one big challenge.
Before I get to my next question, I wouldn't mind opening it up to our attendees. So I don't know who has admin authority here, but maybe you can flip on and off the mics and see who might want to raise their hand and ask Anthony something on their own.
So anyone who wants to ask a question, just go ahead, put your hand up, and I will recognize you.
Randy, did you want to say something?
And
Yes.
Anita didn't say anything. So Randy, then Anita.
Hi. First of all, I want to thank Anthony Furey for coming on and speaking to us. I think it's so important to allow us to get to know all of the candidates. And while I conceptually like quite a bit of your message, I think that for a few of the topics, with all due respect, and I don't mean disrespect, but you sound
Sure.
a little bit naive. And so I'm wondering if you're prepared to really go bold with some very specific strategies of what you would do within the purview of mayor to either direct police force to enforce laws that are on the books, or what have you. Very specifically, what you would do to combat anti-Semitism, to combat the any intolerance with respect to racism and so forth. And also, what powers might you have either on the books, direct, or with respect to influence, that would enable us to get more education into the schools as a regular part of the curriculum to really
Yeah.
help educate the next generation, because I feel that education, or the lack thereof, is what is lending to this increasingly growing problem that we have. Thank you.
And Randy, I take the feedback, and this is just a friendly setting and a relaxed tone. But I'm certainly able to turn on the fire. So let me be clear here. As mayor, I will get on the phone to the head of the Board of Education and say, you are slipping behind. Anti-Semitism is clearly on the rise in the schools. There are incidents of students who have done Nazi salutes to their own teachers. It is unacceptable. We will not tolerate this. And as mayor, I would like to see you bring in a plan to deal with this. If there is a problem where your students do not understand anti-Semitism, they do not understand the history of the Holocaust, then it is your duty as the director of education to go back and look at the curriculum that clearly enables you to be teaching this. So please go and do it pronto. That is what my constituents are telling you. That is how I'll respond to the partner in the Board of Education. When it comes to the Toronto Police Services Board, I will get on the phone with them and I will say, there are bricks being thrown at synagogues. There is very extreme vandalism and graffiti going on that signifies if we don't deal with this soon, we will have larger problems. So you guys got to pick up your game and you got to deal with this.
Thank you. I do have quite a number of other questions, but I will be following you to see how your policies unfold. And I will certainly try and send some suggestions or emails or questions through to your team to see how you might be thinking of certain
and I welcome
policy
them all.
matters.
And you know what? I know the candidate's never supposed to do this. This is my personal Gmail here. This because these connections are important to me. So just email me there. And this is my cell phone. So that's in the chat bar. So you can text me, you can email me, and I'd very much like to receive your thoughts on these important issues. Or if you have questions about any other policy matters, I'm happy to answer.
Well, I appreciate that. Let me just add, I did see your announcement as a mayoral candidate. I actually was very delighted to hear of your announcement and how you spoke during your announcement. I personally think we don't need more of the same. We don't need more politicians as a mayor. We need someone who really can understand the challenges that we face and go in there with a fresh lens. So I was quite delighted when I saw your announcement as a mayoral candidate. Again, I will be reaching out to your team and so forth to see if we do have an alignment and so forth, and if so, how I may help.
Great, thank you so much. And I'd love to have the opportunity to earn your trust and to receive your help.
Thank you. Go get them.
All right, thanks.
So if we have time later, Randy, if you have additional questions, we can always get back to you. But I think now we're going to move on to, was it Hanita who wanted a
Hanita.
question as well?
Yes, thank you.
Anita?
You muted yourself, Anita. You have to unmute yourself.
People still need to learn how to unmute themselves after 3 years of Zooms.
You're still muted, Anita.
Clicking, now here we go.
Now
There
we
we
hear
go.
you.
Found-
Now we hear you,
found
Anita.
The important thing is to find the right button.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I want to pick up on the and stay with the issue of that 3-page document that the city has with regards to hate rallies, which is what Al-Quds Day and the likes are like. A document that has been voted on and is on the city website since 2019, which clearly has not been used and enforced, and somehow it has been blocked somehow.
Right.
Because we had another hate fest in the form of Al-Quds Day in 2020, in 2021, in 2022, and only recently in 2023. So the question I have, first of all, is what it is that is making that document disempowered, improperly used, not used at all, ignored. Because what is happening here is that since 2015, anti-Semitism throughout Canada, and it is definitely concentrated in the largest cities, such as Toronto, it has increased by over 70%. So we're not talking about small things happening here over the last 8-9 years. It's big stuff. And we really need to put a lot of effort into find out what and where. And if there are such documents and if there are such laws and such legislation passed, why isn't the police enforcing it? Why is anti-Semitism the form of hate and discrimination that is the only one where our anti-hate laws appear not to work? I believe that they would work if they were properly enforced, but they appear not to work. And
What's your question, Anita?
yeah, the question is, we need to address issues that have been proven to not work, to be in place, but they are not working. And so really there is a lot of housekeeping that needs to be done very seriously, and house cleaning very, very serious. And that's one of the reasons that I'm supporting you is because you are not part of the problem, because we've had this problem for so many years. We do not want another person that was part of the creation, perpetuation, and looking the other way on these issues.
You know, and when you look at the item that was passed concerning the hate rallies, and you see that it was adopted, everybody voted yes without amendments. And that can mean, oh, great, everybody is 100% on board and we all think it's great. Or it can mean that in some ways they didn't take the exercise seriously. They were just like, oh, okay, yeah, you know, raise your hand, let's move, and let's not even think about this and be done with this. And that sometimes happens with these sorts of policies. And I must say, did they internalize what they were looking at? And is it accurate to, when we have anti-Semitism on the rise, to not single it out? Sometimes when we want to condemn all forms of hate, we are being very serious in our commitment to condemning all forms of hate. I think sometimes when we say it, it's just our way of getting a free pass. Yeah, I condemn all hate. Okay, moving on, kind of thing. And is there an acknowledgement, a formal acknowledgement from City Hall? Anti-Semitism is on the rise and it is worsening. So can we deal with that? Because if we say, yeah, we're against all hate, no problem. Okay, guys, well, are you going to deal with it then? So I think these sort of broad-based definitions don't necessarily help us drill down and get to the concern. And if the concern, and we can tell if there's other concerns, if there's ladies with hijabs being assaulted, then let's deal with that. That's a problem. But if there's concerns of people throwing bricks at synagogues and so on, let's deal with that. Let's not just lump everything in and then not deal with anything. I think we need to name things specifically. And I feel like that hasn't actually been done adequately at City Hall. So sometimes I think the wording of things like this motion is a little too vague, and we're not being as precise as we could in terms of targeting out what's the problem here.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we have Anita who also wants to ask a question. Are you still on, Anita?
Yeah.
Anita.
Hi, how are you? Anthony, if I may, you touched on one of the we've certainly touched on the issue of the hate and security. But, you know, one of the things I think that's very concerning to the Jewish community, and I think you touched on this as well, is that our kids can't afford to live in the city. And that's tearing out this very soul of the Jewish community. Kids can't live near the synagogues that have been built, and you know, a very community that has helped build the city is disintegrating in many ways. So it comes down to some policies that are very much under the rubric of the mayor. I wonder if you can expand a bit more about that concern that you touched on about the cost of living in the city, because it does have quite an impact on the Jewish community and on families, which has been our strength. And two, if I may throw in a second quick question, what do you think about the strong mayor's powers? And would you use them? Do you see needing them in perhaps, how do I put this? You appear a little bit more to the right than a lot of the city councilors. And would you hesitate to use the strong mayor power in circumstances where you feel strongly about the type of policies that you're talking about here? Those are my quick questions.
Yeah, thanks for the question. When it comes to strong mayors, like, you know, politicians, we're supposed to now, and of course I'm new to being a politician, you're supposed to give an answer where you just kind of like tell the person what they want to hear. You know, it's a classic politician thing. The Strong Mayors Act, you never know what someone's opinion is going to be on it. So you just can't do that. You have to be totally honest. But I do have a bit of a get out of jail free card answer on all of this, because I mean, my attitude is I'm seeking a mandate from the public right now to go forward on these various action items. And it's only a mayoral by-election right now. There's no council election. So should I win, I mean, I have a mandate to do this, and the people have said they want to see this happen. So I think it would not be a wise thing for councilors to not go along with the main items in my mandate. And I think I should still be working to persuade people to come along. And if I can persuade everyone in Toronto, I should be able to persuade a few city councilors. So I'm not like champing at the bit to use the Strong Mayors Act. It would be great to get more than 50% of councilors on board, because, you know, we're in a big, diverse city and we all want to work together. That said, if we are facing issues where a few stubborn holdouts are not allowing me to fulfill the mandate, then I think I probably would have to use those powers on a case-by-case basis. When it comes to certain things that are really about the lifeblood of the city. And affordability is one of them, to go back to your first question. As I've said, we will not be proceeding with the municipal sales tax, the road tolls, the commercial parking levy, which is going to cascade down to hurt regular folks. It's basically an excuse to charge you for parking even when there's free parking. This is a thing that just the other day, Mr. Matlow said he wants to get $500 million out of people for this. That's his target figure on that. And I'm not willing to do that to folks. We think it'll just be Cadillac Fairview will pay out of their profit margin. That's not what is going to happen. They're going to start charging for parking at Fairview Mall, and even small places, they're going to have to start charging for parking to cover the big fees the city's dinging them with. Also, and Jordan, I apologize, but I'm going to break the embargo and announcement we have tomorrow. If you can just keep this between us folks until tomorrow morning, me and a fairly well-known realtor are going to be in front of the cameras tomorrow talking about how we are going to phase out the land transfer tax. It is just unethical that if you live north of Steeles, you do not pay this. If you live south of Steeles, you pay this. This is the most celebratory moment in people's lives. In many cases, buying a home, and then we go, here you go, we're going to ding you for an extra 20K. In the first year, because it does create a budget gap, in the first year, we're going to get rid of it for first-time home buyers. So these are young people just starting a family, getting their first home. And that's when it's really tough, scrimping and saving for that down payment. So we're going to be able to save them $25,000 on that. And then for subsequent years, hopefully in a first term, I would like to deliver a phase out of the whole thing. I think it was an ethical challenge when David Miller brought it in 2007. They got addicted to the revenue. So I'm going to have to do some really serious budgetary work to phase it out. But year one, no more land transfer tax for the young folks, for the young families.
Thank you, Anita. I have another couple of questions, but I also want to leave it still open to anybody else. So do we have any further questions from the attendees? You can just jump in or raise your hand or scream.
So it's Randy, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you. So Mr. Furey, I actually was at the hospital at Mount Sinai this afternoon and got reminded yet again how ridiculous the bike lanes are and how they really have been put in to service basically the loudest voice in the room and quite a minority, I might add. The obstruction of the bike lanes in the downtown core, in addition to the construction that we suffer throughout the year and so forth, has made our downtown core virtually impassable and impossible to navigate. What very specifically would you do to combat this? And why is it that the data is showing that the impact to commuters or people in their cars is very minimal? Because I can attest to the fact that that has absolutely not been the case. And as a tax-paying citizen of this fair city, I am fed up with waiting in 3 blocks of traffic. Well, it takes me 10 minutes to go 3 blocks, and maybe 2 bicycles will pass, and that's in the summer. So what very specifically could you do to create more of an equilibrium and more of a fair, if you will, outlook with respect to all of those who need to get places in the various transportation modes that we need to use?
Yeah, thanks for the
Thank you.
question, Randy. And I think you almost tragically nailed it, how you presented it, saying you were traveling to the hospital and you experienced these frustrations. I mean, there you go. Like, that should not be a scenario where the city creates something that impedes something as important as going to the hospital. Look, last week, I gave a press conference that really got people talking, where I said, as mayor of Toronto, I will say no to new bike lanes on major roads. So there are currently plans for Shepherd, for Eglinton, for Bloor Street West, for Kingston Road, not on my watch. They're doing the dedicated bike lanes, of course, which are the concrete blocks, so rigid. Ambulance unions have already said they're a headache. Back in 2018, University Health Network said, please don't put this on University Avenue. It's going to be very frustrating for Hospital Row. Taste of the Danforth last year was postponed. It was canceled last year, in large part due to the bike lanes and just the inflexibility, the rigidity of it, and the safety concerns. When you got a whole bunch of people, many seniors walking around, Taste of the Danforth falling and breaking their knees on these things. It's just awful. So we're pausing those projects. We're not proceeding with them. And the dedicated bike lane pillars and posts on University Avenue will be removed, because we just can't do this on Hospital Row. We've all seen it happen where ambulances go, okay, I got to get by, and there's traffic there, and there would be more space for cars to move out of the way to let the ambulance pass if you didn't have this whole lane taken over by the bike lanes there. There's a lot of concerns about the Yonge Street bike lane. There's an old joke that there's nothing more permanent than a pilot project. They said it was just a pilot. They made it permanent. And I would certainly like to speak with stakeholders about what they want to do about these other lanes. I've said the University Avenue one is being torn up because I feel like that's unobjectionable. That's the one we got to start with, and we got to pause the other ones. And look, we're all reasonable people. I go out biking. I go with my kids. Many people do, both for leisure and to go places. but there are other roads where it can be done more safely for everybody involved, and where we're able to share our streets more. So that is my position. And I think, Randy, what you're saying speaks to what so many people are saying. There's a poll right now that shows 2/3 of people think the way you and I do on all of this. It's just gone too far.
I wholeheartedly agree, and thank you for your position. Stay strong with it. We need that in our mayor for sure. Yeah,
We'll do.
thank you.
So I think we have time for one more question, and then I'm getting some private messages sent to me, Anthony. You can address this after we do the last question.
Sure.
People are wondering what they can do specifically to help your campaign. So, Dave, I don't know if you want to ask the one last question, and then Anthony, you can take it from there, sir.
Yeah, so I'm happy to leave this out for our attendees if anybody has one last question, and if not, I can do it. So I'll give you a couple of seconds just to jump in, and if not, then I will ask that last question. So going.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Anthony, I love your response to the following. Somebody comes up to you and says, you're not a politician. You don't have political experience. You never served in public office before.
I say, stop flattering me. Stop selling the positives. You're
Fair
being too
enough.
kind.
Fair enough. You're an outsider. What would make you the good mayor that you think you would be, with no public service behind you? And as a corollary, what do you have in terms of experience that you would bring as mayor?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And look, I'm proud of the fact that I have spent well over the past decade engaging with people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, and all different levels of expertise and areas of expertise in my career in political journalism, in grappling with these issues. And let me tell you, when I devised the drug injection site policy, what did I do? I got on the phone right away to the top people in the country. Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta, is doing similar things. I chatted with her top people. I chatted with top people in the ministry. I got on the phone to people in BC. That's what I would have done in my media career. That's what I did here. You go to the top people and you say, what are the action items? Because the mayor needn't be the smartest person in the room, but you need to know how to connect with the smartest people in the room, in the world, in the country, in the city, to get their voices in and to get that dynamism going. I've had some great conversations with CEOs, whether it's just been chatting on the phone or doing fundraisers with them. And they say, hey, I've got this great idea. Let's make it happen and let's have more voices. Let's include as many people as possible. We just had, I think, a very good conversation about some laws that the city's passed, some bylaws that maybe aren't being followed. And I don't stand up and say I'm the absolute expert on that. I say that there are some people on this call who are experts on that. I need to hear from you. So I think in a large part, leadership is about empowering other voices that can in turn empower you. And that's what I'll be committed to doing. Because I think one of the reasons we have these challenges at City Hall, where you have crazy rallies that are allowed to happen with impunity, where you have a city that's just bike lanes everywhere, and it's not stopping, is because there are a certain niche of special interest voices that have dominated City Hall. And what I'm talking about, broadening the conversation, going out to the actual private sector or advocacy group voices or what have you, and letting them sort of speak through you, that hasn't been done enough. And really broadening the conversation. Who really runs this city? Because right now it seems like to some degree, the wrong people are running this city. And I don't mean the mayor and the councillors, but I mean those voices that end up taking charge. And I want to empower some new voices, some different voices. Let them have the say.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you for everybody for carving a little time this evening to discuss these issues. So we will bid you a good night, and I think there'll be more information through the chat box or email to connect
and Dave,
with
I know,
this candidate.
Pardon me to interrupt, but I know Jordan encouraged me to say those who would like to support, what can they do? And I thank you for that opportunity. If you're interested in being involved in the campaign, we would absolutely love to have you in any capacity. organizing calls with people, helping us out with volunteering. All talents are most welcome and most needed. And in terms of fundraising, early money is really key for me to continue to have the opportunity to get out there and get that message heard, to communicate with voters, either knocking on the door, or as you know, I get airtime, I get TV time, I get newspaper time. So those issues that we share our passions for, I can speak about them more up there on that mayoral platform. So if you can go to furey.ca to contribute, and there are very considerable rebates, up to 75% you get back in a rebate check. So the money really does go far, and any contributions are greatly appreciated.
There you have it. Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, everybody. And all the best. Good luck, Anthony.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it.
Have a great night, everyone.
Bye-bye.